Let's get right into it. Number 8, the Royal Flush, aka the Gong Farmer. Welcome to medieval Europe, where sanitation was optional. If you lived in a castle or a big town, you had facilities. But those facilities all drained to one place, a giant pit of human waste called a cesspit. And when that pit got full, someone had to clean it. That someone was the Gong Farmer. Gong, by the way, was the very polite medieval word for, gong. Your job, usually done at night so the smell wouldn't knock out the whole neighborhood, was to climb into that pit and shovel it out. You'd fill buckets and haul them away. Imagine this. The smell of the worst music festival porta potty on the final day. Now imagine that's your office, and you're in it. This job was literally the bottom of the barrel, and the barrel was full of stuff. It was also incredibly dangerous. You weren't just dealing with the smell. You were swimming in a soup of bacteria and parasites. Diseases like cholera and typhoid were just waiting for you. Plus, the fumes, the methane and ammonia could literally make you pass out and drown. In Gong, you had one of the lowest social statuses possible, but hey, at least you never had to fight for a seat at the bar. People gave you a 50-foot radius. Number 7, the town's most unpopular celebrity, aka the executioner. Fast forward a bit, you've heard of public service, but this is a different kind. Being the official executioner sounds powerful, right? You're the arm of the law, you're the main event. Well, yes, but you were also the most hated person in town. Executioners had zero social status. You were shunned, ostracized. People wouldn't touch you. You often had to live outside the city walls, sometimes with other undesirables. You couldn't go to the local tavern for a beer. Everyone would just leave. You were seen as unclean for doing the state's dirty work. And the job itself? It was high-stress public performance. Your stage was a wooden platform, and your audience was the entire, very judgmental town. Your job was to perform gruesome acts, like beheadings or the very complicated drawing and quartering, and you had to be good at it. If you messed up, say, you missed with the axe, oof. Not only is that, horrible, but the crowd would riot. They'd throw rocks, try to attack you. You got booed for failing to kill someone properly. Talk about a tough crowd. Number 6, the original take one for the team, aka the whipping boy. Now for a job that sounds kinda nice, until it isn't. In the 17th century in Europe, if you were a young prince, like the future king of England, you had a problem. You were basically divine. Your dad was chosen by God, which means you were chosen by God, and you can't just punish God's chosen, right? Even if he's a little brat who won't do his Latin homework. Enter the whipping boy. This wasn't just some random kid. This was a high-status noble boy, chosen specifically to be the prince's best friend. You'd live in the palace, eat the best food, wear the best clothes, get the best education, right alongside the prince. You were his number one, bro. And then, when the prince acted up, you got whipped. That was the job. You were a human proxy server for pain. The logic was flawless. The prince would feel so bad seeing his best buddy get brutally flogged for something he did that he'd instantly learn his lesson and become a better person. Or, he'd just learn that actions have no consequences for him, and you'd learn to resent Latin. One of the two. It's the ultimate, this meeting could have been an email, but the meeting is a beating. Number 5, the human bug zapper, aka the jam boy. This next one from the 1800s sounds so ridiculous that it might be a fictional urban legend, but the fact that the legend even exists tells you everything you need to know. Welcome to the job of the jam boy. The story goes that on large fancy estates, especially in places with a lot of swamps or golf courses like Scotland, the mosquitoes were a problem, a big, biting, annoying problem. And rich people hate being annoyed. So what's the solution? You can't just spray repellent, that's for peasants. No, you hire a young boy, pay him very little, have him wear almost nothing, and then you cover him in jam. Yes, jam. His job was to just stand there near the rich people, being a delicious, sticky, human-sized mosquito trap. The bugs would swarm him instead of the golfers. He would just stand there, getting eaten alive while they finished their game. The pay was awful, but hey, the perk was you allegedly got to keep the jam, which by the end of the day was probably 50% jam and 50% mosquito. It's the only job listing in history where must be okay with being eaten is a key responsibility. Number 4. The Trench Life Vacation, aka the WWI soldier. We had to get here. If the other jobs were bad, this one was a literal industrialized nightmare. Being a soldier in World War I wasn't just a bad job, it was a statistical probability of a horrific end. You lived, ate, slept, and fought in a giant, open-air sewer called a trench. It was filled with mud, stagnant water, human waste, and your fallen comrades. Your neighbors weren't just the guys in the next trench over. They were the rats. We're talking rats the size of house cats, grown fat from, well, you know. Then there was the trench foot, a lovely condition where your feet basically rotted and died from being constantly wet and cold. And that's before the enemy tries to kill you. You had to worry about snipers, artillery shells, and machine guns. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, humanity invented poison gas, a cloud of chemical death that would melt your lungs. Medical care? If you got hit, adequate care was often a surgeon with a bone saw and no anesthetic. And if you survived all that, congratulations, you get to go home with shell shock, what we now know as severe PTSD, a parting gift that would haunt you for the rest of your life. Number 3, the ancient Egyptian project manager, aka the tomb builder. Kicking things off, we go way back to ancient Egypt. You look at the pyramids and think, wow, majestic, powerful, aliens maybe? What you should be thinking is, wow, that must have been the worst group project of all time. If you were a tomb builder, your job was simple. Spend your entire life in the blazing hot desert, from sunrise to sunset, carving and moving multi-ton blocks of stone. Your tools? A copper chisel that probably bent every 10 minutes, and a strong, crushing sense of regret. Imagine this. Your boss asks you to move a filing cabinet. Now, imagine that filing cabinet weighs 50 tons. It's 110 degrees outside. The floor is sinking sand and your only dolly is a couple of logs and some wet mud. That was their entire day. And the health benefits? Oh, they were great. You got a high chance of silicosis. That's your lungs turning to rock from all the stone dust. You had snakes and scorpions hiding under every other stone. And if you dropped one of those giant limestone blocks, let's just say workers' comp hadn't been invented. The perks were usually just not being actively whipped at that specific moment. What a steal. Number 2, the Greek get-rich-slow scheme, aka the silver miner. Let's hop over to ancient Greece. While philosophers were busy pondering the meaning of life, thousands of other people were deep underground, having the absolute worst time imaginable. If you were really unlucky, like wronged a god unlucky, you'd end up as a silver mine worker, especially in places like Lorient. Most of these workers were slaves, and their office was a cramped, dark tunnel, often only 3 feet high. They'd spend 10-hour shifts on their backs or stomachs, chipping away at rock in total darkness, save for a single, smoky oil lamp that was also trying to kill them. The ventilation was, let's just call it conceptual. You were breathing in toxic lead and mercury fumes all day. You know, the stuff we now need a hazmat team to handle, that was just Tuesday. Cave-ins were constant. If a tunnel collapsed, the rescue operation was usually just shrugging. If you were a slave, you weren't worth the time it would take to dig you out. They'd often just seal that part of the mine and start a new tunnel. Your lifespan wasn't measured in years, it was measured in months. All that, just so some rich Athenian could have a shiny new cup. Number 1, the modern gig that tests your soul, aka the slaughterhouse worker. We like to think we've automated all the truly awful jobs, that we're civilized now. But the worst job isn't always in the past. We're not going to get too graphic here, but you know where your burger comes from. And the people who work in modern industrial slaughterhouses, they have a job that is, in a word, brutal. It's not just the physical danger, which is high, working with heavy machinery and panicked animals. It's the psychological toll. The job is a constant, non-stop exposure to gore and violence. There's a specific role, often called the sticker, whose entire job is to, well, you can guess. They stand on a line and make the same cut, severing the carotid arteries of cows all day long, over and over and over. Imagine the repetitive motion strain of an office job, but with that, the sights, the sounds, the smell. It's a job that has incredibly high rates of PTSD, depression, and anxiety. It's a necessary job for the way our society works, but it's one that costs the people who do it a lot. Forget paper cuts. This is a different league of a tough day at the office. So, how's that quarterly report looking now? Maybe not so bad, right? Makes you kind of grateful for slow Wi-Fi and that guy who replies all to every single email. We've come a long way from dodging 50-ton blocks and being covered in jam for mosquitoes. If you learned way too much about historical misery today, do me a favor and execute that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next time we dig up the weirdest parts of history. Stay chill.